There comes a moment in life when you realize that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Not because you're better than them, but because you've worked too hard for your peace to give it away for free. You've survived storms no one saw. You've stitched wounds with your own hands. And now that you finally stand on your feet, calm and composed, some people still try to pull you back into the chaos they refuse to leave behind. Toxic people don't always look dangerous. Sometimes they come with smiles. Sometimes they speak the right words. But you can always feel them, draining your energy, unsettling your thoughts, leaving you questioning your worth after every interaction. You begin to understand that protecting your peace doesn't require a speech, just a decision. A quiet one that says, "I'm not available for this anymore." The Stoics didn't seek revenge. They sought clarity, and in that clarity they found freedom. Not from others, but from the need to be pulled into every storm that passes. If this kind of stillness resonates with where you are or where you're headed, feel free to subscribe. It helps this message reach others who are ready to choose depth over noise. And more than anything, it's a quiet way of saying, this is the kind of life I'm choosing now. Have you ever noticed how much of your life has been shaped by what you respond to? Every text you didn't want to answer, every argument you didn't want to have, every person you gave just one more chance. It adds up, not just in time, but in energy, in identity, in the quiet erosion of your emotional foundation. Toxic people don't always crash into your life with dramatic chaos. Often they come quietly with something more dangerous, bait. The kind that looks like concern, sounds like love, or feels like obligation. But it's bait all the same. The moment you react, with anger, with defense, with that one last long message explaining yourself, you've already given them what they came for. Your attention, your peace, your center, because that's what they're really after. Not resolution, control. And here's the harsh truth. They'll keep playing the same game, using different words, as long as you keep stepping onto the field. The Stoics understood this long before we gave it names like emotional boundaries or detachment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, your response is your realm. That's where your power lives. It's not about being passive. It's about being precise. About understanding that every time you react to something unworthy of your energy, you're voting against your own peace. You're letting someone else decide how you feel, how you think, how much space they get inside your mind. And if they didn't earn that place with trust, respect, or kindness, why are they living there rent-free? Sometimes silence is stronger than any comeback. Not the cold, dismissive kind, but the grounded kind. The kind that says, this doesn't deserve my energy. And that decision, to say nothing, to walk away, to not attend every argument you're invited to, is not weakness, it's maturity. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And while that's true, it doesn't mean we have to sit in the irritation. We can learn and still leave. We can reflect and still walk away. But leaving doesn't always mean slamming the door. Sometimes it's quieter than that. A shift in presence, a subtle retreat. The moment you stop explaining your worth, you begin to live from it. That's where the transformation starts. You begin to respond less and reflect more. You begin to feel less responsible for fixing other people's discomfort and more committed to preserving your own stillness. People who thrive on reaction can't stand stillness. It unnerves them. They rely on emotional confusion to maintain control. But the moment you stop giving them your fire, they have nothing to burn. You stop feeding the dysfunction, and they feel that absence like a door gently but firmly closing. There's a freedom in no longer needing to be understood by the wrong people. A quiet strength in no longer performing emotional labor for those who never reciprocated it. Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living, but he also taught through silence, through listening more than speaking, through knowing when words build and when they destroy. When you begin to practice this restraint, something changes in you. Your energy becomes more centered, your relationships more intentional. You start to notice which conversations drain you, which people spark unease instead of peace. And most of all, you start to notice how much of your suffering was rooted in trying to be heard by people who weren't listening and never planned to. This is where philosophy meets practice, not in books or debates, but in daily choices. In that one moment when you decide, I don't need to respond to this, and you don't. You go for a walk instead. You focus on your craft. You speak with someone who lifts you up rather than tears you down. You choose clarity over conflict. That one moment seems small, but it builds into something profound. Like Plato said, the first and best victory is to conquer self. And what better victory than the one where you win back your mind? The more you practice, the easier it becomes. You begin to master the pause, to delay the reaction, and eventually you no longer crave the last word, because you've found something better, inner calm. And from that place, even when someone tries to shake you, you don't move. Not because you're frozen, but because you've learned to stay rooted. Boundaries begin to set themselves, not as walls of bitterness, but as lines of clarity. You don't have to explain them. You just live them, and the people who truly care about you, they'll feel the shift, not as rejection, but as refinement. In the end, it's not about pushing people away. It's about choosing who gets to stay close. Who gets your softness, your time, your attention. That's your currency. And when you spend it wisely, your life begins to reflect the same discipline. You don't have to respond to every invitation into chaos. You don't have to correct every misjudgment. And you definitely don't have to light yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Hold your silence. Guard your peace. Withdraw with grace. Let the storm pass while you remain still. Because the real power, it was never in your reaction. It was in your ability to walk away and still remain whole. You don't have to play every game you're invited to. Not every jab, accusation, or subtle insult deserves your presence. But we're conditioned to believe otherwise. We grow up thinking strength is loud, that if someone disrespects you, the only way to protect your pride is to react, to defend, to outsmart, outtalk, outshout. And for a while, maybe that feels like power. Maybe it gives you that short rush, that sense of being in control. But it's a trap. Because when your peace depends on winning arguments, you're still handing control to someone else. They set the rules. You just play. And the more you play, the more exhausted you become. Eventually, you start losing track of what you're even fighting for. What if true strength is the refusal to be moved? Imagine someone trying to push your buttons again and again, expecting you to explode like you always have. But this time, you don't. You notice the attempt. You feel the tension rise inside you, but you pause, you breathe, you don't flinch, you don't bite. And that moment of stillness, that choice to remain calm, becomes more powerful than any comeback you could ever throw. Without your reaction, their power dissolves. You pull the curtain back on the game and show it for what it is. Dysfunction, insecurity, control disguised as care. And suddenly, even they can see it. Not because you pointed it out, but because your absence of reaction becomes the mirror they can't avoid. Seneca said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." And while that delay is a powerful tool, the Stoics went further. They didn't just believe in holding back. They believed in letting go, in rising so far above the drama that the chaos couldn't even reach them anymore. That's not avoidance, that's detachment. And detachment isn't about caring less, it's about caring better. It's about protecting your energy so that it can serve your growth, not fuel someone else's dysfunction. This is the shift. It's not about cutting people off in a storm of rage. It's about quietly becoming someone they can no longer access. No confrontation, no announcement, just space, clean and intentional. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." When we constantly fight dysfunction with more dysfunction, we end up feeding it. But when we starve it, when we respond with stillness, it shrinks, it loses its hold. That's what makes detachment so hard and so powerful. It's not dramatic, it's disciplined. The people who once depended on your reaction won't know what to do when you stop giving it. They'll push harder at first, get louder, more dramatic, but that's just noise, a desperate attempt to regain control. The truth is, they don't miss you. They miss your reaction. They miss the emotional energy you used to pour into the fight. And when they realize it's gone, truly gone, that's when you reclaim your power. Plato once wrote, "The measure of a man is what he does with power, not just the power he's given, but the power he holds over his emotions, his boundaries, his peace." And that kind of power, it doesn't shout, it doesn't plead, it stands still, it watches. And it knows that not all storms are worth walking into, especially when the goal is to stay dry. You're not required to justify your peace. You don't owe anyone access just because they demand it. And the moment you realize that, your entire posture shifts. You stop explaining your silence. You stop apologizing for choosing calm over chaos. You become someone who doesn't flinch when poked, doesn't break when tested, and doesn't entertain battles that only leave scars. This doesn't mean you become passive. Quite the opposite. It means you act with intention. You choose where your energy goes. You decide which fires are worth walking into, and most of them aren't. Aristotle taught that virtue lies in balance, not in excess, not in deficiency, but in moderation. And that includes emotional energy. Too much reaction, and you become a puppet. Too little engagement, and you disappear. But just enough presence, just enough space and stillness, and you become something far more powerful than reactive. You become composed. Socrates believed that the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. And in conflict, this rings especially true. You don't need to prove your intelligence. You don't need to win every point. Sometimes wisdom is stepping back and letting others unravel their own argument while you protect your mind from the wreckage. This way of being isn't easy. It takes practice. But every time you choose silence over sarcasm, breath over blame, patience over provocation, you reinforce that you are no longer available for emotional games, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Eventually, people stop inviting you to those games. They sense the change, and even if they don't like it, they respect it. Because nothing is more unsettling to someone who thrives on drama than a person who refuses to react. So keep your peace sacred. Don't trade it for temporary validation. Don't hand it over to people who treat it carelessly. Let them talk. Let them spin their stories. You're no longer playing. You're protecting, growing, and most of all, you're free. Why do we feel guilty for protecting our peace? Why does saying no come with an apology? Somewhere along the way, we were taught that setting a boundary makes us difficult. That distance is a punishment. That silence is cruelty. So we over-explain. We soften our tone. We wrap our truth in layers of disclaimers just to make it more acceptable to people who never asked how we felt in the first place. But the Stoic doesn't argue with misunderstanding. They don't chase validation or bend themselves into shapes just to be palatable. Instead, they step back, not with anger, with clarity. Because when you begin to understand the weight of your own peace, you stop offering it up so freely. You begin to realize that preserving your well-being doesn't make you selfish. It makes you self-aware. Aristotle once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And part of knowing yourself is learning when your boundaries have been crossed, even subtly, even in the spaces where no one else seems to notice. It's when someone jokes at your expense one too many times, when someone expects your time, your energy, your attention, without ever asking what it costs you, and still you stay silent, trying to avoid the label, cold, rude, dramatic. But here's the truth. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're doors to let the right ones in. And a firm boundary, quietly enforced, is louder than any confrontation. When you no longer feel the need to defend your limits, you start to carry yourself differently. You don't announce your absence, you just stop showing up where your presence was never honored. Carl Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And who you truly are can't be found in the constant explaining, apologizing, or shrinking. It's found in the quiet decisions you make. To say less, to walk away sooner, to value peace over performance. There's strength in that silence, not the kind that avoids conflict out of fear, but the kind that chooses not to waste energy on battles that lead nowhere. And this is what unsettles toxic people the most. They don't get the reaction, they don't get closure, they don't get the emotional feedback loop they've come to expect, because you've stopped playing a role in their story. You turned inward, you fortified your mind, you stopped waiting for someone to understand your worth and started living like it was already understood. That kind of shift is subtle but powerful. People begin to notice, even if they can't quite name what's different. Maybe you don't text back immediately. Maybe you don't respond at all. Maybe you stop offering explanations for your silence. And what they don't realize is, your silence isn't an absence of care. It's the presence of self-respect. Plato once wrote, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." And that victory often looks like choosing stillness over reaction, distance over drama. It looks like saying, "This conversation no longer serves me," and not saying it out loud, just living it. It looks like detaching not because you're bitter, but because you're no longer available for confusion masquerading as connection. This isn't about walking away from everyone or building a fortress around your heart. It's about being more selective, about realizing that your time, energy, and emotional presence are not unlimited resources to be handed out to whoever asks loudest. Socrates believed that an unexamined life is not worth living. And part of that examination is looking at who drains you, who energizes you, and why you keep tolerating what leaves you feeling less than whole. Eventually, something changes. The guilt fades, the clarity stays, and you stop feeling like you need a backstory for every decision. You start trusting your silence. You start trusting the way your body tenses around certain people, the way you feel lighter when you're no longer engaging with someone who always seemed to bring a storm. That's the shift. You're no longer trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You're not seeking closure from people who aren't capable of giving it. You're not asking people to treat you better. You're just removing yourself from the space where they don't. And that decision, to protect your peace without asking permission, is one of the most radical, life-changing things you can do, because it signals something deeper, that you are no longer willing to betray yourself for the comfort of others, that you've finally decided your own inner stillness matters more than being liked, agreed with, or even remembered. So if someone's wondering why you've pulled back, why you're quieter, why you're no longer so quick to reply. Let them wonder. You don't owe them a speech. Let your calm be your boundary. Let your absence explain what your words never could. Because when you start living like your peace is sacred, the right people will feel it, and the wrong ones will fall away. Sometimes the most powerful thing you'll ever do is leave quietly. No big speech, no final blow-up, no need for a dramatic goodbye, just absence. That kind of exit doesn't make noise, but it echoes. Because presence can be manipulated, it can be argued with, gaslit, twisted. But absence? That's different. Absence is undeniable. It's a mirror, and it forces people to face something they often avoid, the space you once filled. People who depended on your reaction, who fed off your apologies, your explanations, your constant effort to keep the peace, they'll feel it when you're no longer there. Not when you raise your voice, not when you send that long message explaining how much they hurt you, but when you go quiet, when the energy they used to pull from you suddenly dries up. That's when your worth becomes visible, even to the ones who never truly saw it. It's not coldness, it's clarity. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And that still holds true, because walking away with grace instead of trying to match someone's chaos isn't weakness, it's evolution. It means you're no longer trying to win a battle that only leaves both sides bleeding. You're not mirroring the dysfunction, you're not proving anything, you're simply removing yourself from the game. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, it does. Leaving quietly can feel like swallowing your pride, like letting go without closure. But what you gain in return is something much more valuable: self-respect, stillness, space to heal in peace, without someone pulling you back into old roles you've outgrown. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And when you leave with composure instead of chaos, your action speaks volumes. It says, "I no longer live at the mercy of your approval." It says, "This version of me, the one that explained, that stayed too long, that tolerated the disrespect, no longer exists." What many don't realize is that people often treat you based on how you treat yourself. When you stay in places that drain you, when you explain your worth like it's a debate, you silently teach others that your peace is negotiable. But when you leave quietly, when you walk away without a trail of drama, you reclaim control, not over them, but over yourself. Plato once wrote, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." And the kind of power we're talking about here isn't dominance, it's restraint. It's the power to know you could destroy someone with your words, your anger, your truth, and still choose silence. Because silence, when it comes from a place of strength, isn't empty, it's intentional. There's something sacred about distance. It shows you who truly valued your presence and who only valued your compliance. The people who cared only when you were convenient will reveal themselves when you're no longer accessible. And that truth, it's not always easy to swallow, but it's clean, it's honest, and it frees you from carrying dead weight wrapped in nostalgia. You begin to see that not every relationship needs a formal ending. Some simply dissolve the moment you stop feeding them. That's not abandonment, that's alignment. The moment you choose peace over chaos, stillness over performance, you step into a version of yourself that no longer needs to prove they deserve peace. They just live in it. Socrates believed that the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And that's what leaving quietly does. It stops pouring energy into the argument, the explanation, the hope that they'll change. And it starts building space for something better, for a life where your energy isn't constantly being spent on surviving relationships that only take. What's surprising is how many people don't notice the shift right away. They assume your silence is temporary, that you'll come back like you always have. But when they realize you're gone for good, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop, that's when the discomfort sets in. Not for you, for them. You don't owe a farewell tour. You don't have to make them understand. Let your absence say what your words never could. Let your distance speak the truth. You've outgrown that version of yourself, and the people who kept you there. The beautiful part is, you don't have to carry bitterness with you. Leaving quietly means you don't take the chaos into your next chapter. You just leave it behind, without looking back. That's not escape, that's growth. So if you're sitting in a place where you're wondering whether to stay or go, ask yourself one thing. What will cost you more in the long run, leaving or staying silent in a space that's been stealing your peace? Aristotle said, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've finally seen the cost of constantly trying to explain yourself to those who never really listened. It's a quiet step, but a powerful one. You step into what the Stoics knew all along, that peace doesn't come from getting the last word. It comes from realizing you don't need to speak at all. You stop performing, you stop reacting, you stop proving, not because you've given up, but because you've grown tired of bleeding energy for people who feed off your discomfort. There is strength in that stillness, and not everyone can handle it. Do you know what toxic people hate most? They hate when they no longer get to decide who you are. They hate when their chaos doesn't pull you in like it used to, when their words no longer land, when their silence no longer scares you, because they're no longer steering the ship, you are. Your stillness unsettles them, your peace confuses them, and your composure, that becomes your loudest response. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and becoming who you truly are often requires letting go of the need to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. It means accepting that some people only loved the version of you that didn't have boundaries, the version of you who said yes when you were tired, who explained your pain until your throat burned, who bent just enough to stay likable, even as it broke you. But composure changes that. It says without words, I'm no longer interested in performing for people who only clap when I'm suffering, and it doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need a dramatic exit. The change is energetic. It's internal. Your presence begins to feel different, calmer, clearer. People can feel it, and even if they can't name it, they know something has shifted. You're not reactive anymore. You're intentional. Plato believed that the measure of a man is what he does with power, and real power, the kind that isn't loud or controlling, often looks like restraint, like choosing not to respond to the insult, not to engage in the argument, not to defend yourself against someone who was never interested in the truth. It's not passivity, it's direction. You're no longer caught in the storm, you're walking away from it, slowly, steadily, on your terms. You begin to see how often you've drained yourself just trying to be heard. How many times you raised your voice, not out of anger, but desperation, just hoping someone would understand. But now you see that the ones who care don't need convincing, and the ones who don't will never be convinced. That realization frees something inside of you. It lifts the burden, and in that space, something softer takes root, self-respect. Socrates said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." And knowing yourself means knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to engage and when to walk away, when to fight for a connection and when to stop watering a dead plant. It's a calm awareness that rises above reaction, not because you don't feel deeply, but because you've learned not every feeling needs to be shared with those who weaponize them. Your silence becomes a form of emotional discipline, not the cold, distant kind, the powerful, deliberate kind, the kind that protects your peace like a sacred flame, because you've learned how easy it is to lose yourself in the noise of someone else's chaos, how quickly you can be pulled into someone else's storm, even when you've done the work to find your own calm. That's the gift of composure. It doesn't erase your emotions. It respects them. It allows you to carry your dignity into places where others dropped theirs. It keeps you rooted in who you are, not in how others try to define you. And maybe most importantly, it frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to be chosen by people who never had the capacity to see you clearly. Aristotle believed that excellence is not a single act, but a habit, and composure, like any discipline, is something you build. You start small. You pause before reacting. You notice the pull toward old patterns, and you choose differently, one breath at a time, one choice at a time, until the person who used to respond with fire is now a person who protects their light instead. And over time, that light becomes untouchable. Not because you've built walls, but because you've built self-awareness. Not because you're above others, but because you finally understand the value of your presence. You're no longer accessible to everyone, and that's not cruelty. That's growth. The people who truly care won't fear your silence. They'll respect it. They'll sit with it. They'll understand that your quiet doesn't mean distance. It means depth. It means you've outgrown the need to constantly explain your existence to people who were never listening anyway. So when that moment comes, when you feel the urge to defend yourself, to fight back, to chase one more moment of being understood, pause. Take a breath. Let your stillness speak, and let your peace be the answer that no argument can touch. Sometimes, the strongest voice in the room is the one that no longer needs to speak. Thank you for spending these few minutes with me and with yourself. If this message spoke to something true in you, there's another video on your screen that might go even deeper.